Hello, welcome to Oceanic Oracle. My name is Ari and today I'm going through my March wrap-up. This month has seemed to steam by really quickly. I have had a lot of fun with the books that I've chosen this month. It has been quite successful. It's been a really successful month. So not only have I read the 7 cards that I drew in my card game, I've also decided that this set is final because I now have 5 sets, and in the original game that this is based on, whoever gets 5 sets first wins the game. Therefore, I've won the game because I have achieved and I've got all these sets. I'm going to be shuffling everything back into the deck for the start of April, which means these games will last every quarter, which is perfect for me. And it means that I can just go through and I can keep shuffling. Without further ado, I should get on to the books that I've read. Let's get started. So the first book that I read in March is, to no one's surprise, The Lightning Thief. I'm a big fan of Percy Jackson series. This book was for Lightning Strikes Twice, which is the second card in my brown set. So with this, I finished the brown set. The Lightning Thief follows Percy Jackson's journey to begin to understand the world of Greek mythology after going on a trip to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, looking at ancient Greek and Roman stuff. He gets attacked by an ancient Greek monster, and thus he gets dragged into the world of Greek myth, and he's told that he's a demigod. So there's that too. This series is one of my favourites. Without this series, I wouldn't be the person I am. This book is really fast-paced. The main genres in this book are sort of magical realism and mythology because it takes place in the real world. This book is really adventurous and it's light-hearted. It has a special place in my heart. One of the main goals in this book, as you can tell by the title, Zeus's lightning bolt has been stolen, and Percy's goal is to bring Zeus's lightning back. Otherwise, there's going to be a new war going on, and no one wants a big Greek war. No one wants a repeat of the Trojan War. I gave this 5 stars. There's a big surprise. I think throughout my time rereading it, I'll probably get more critical. I absolutely love them. I love the characters. I love the setting. I love the writing. The plot is really good. Going back and listening and reading this again, I always sort of notice new things, and that's what I really enjoy about rereading this. I'm not gonna stop. There we go. That was the first book of March. Appropriate for me because I started it on my birthday. So the next book that I read in March was Stung with Love, Poems and Fragments by Sappho. Sappho is a pretty famous female Greek poet and composer. Her name is the root of the name Sapphic, so there's lots of sort of lesbian love in here. Same-sex couples were quite common in ancient Greece. No one looked twice. The card that I got, which led to this, was There Was Nothing, which is to read a book classed as mythology. This book's the first real poetry book I've read. You have a foreword by Caroline Duffy, and you have notes from the translator. The way that this book is set up is that you have the actual poem and fragment on the side as well as the translator's notes. So the translator actually tells you certain things that are in the poem or in the fragment. I feel like this edition of these poems was quite good. So you have 5 different sections in this book. So you have Goddesses, Desire and Death Longing, Her Girls and Family, Troy, Maidens and Marriages, and The Wisdom of Sappho. So you have 5 different sections. This book was really easy to digest. I gave this book 4 stars. It was sort of it was more medium paced because while the non-fiction sections could be slow, obviously reading poetry is quite quick. I enjoyed reading Sappho's works as someone who hasn't read many of her poems. It was a good look into that sort of stuff in ancient Greece. It was a part of ancient Greek history that I don't have much knowledge about. There's lots of Greek history which people like to gloss over, but stuff like this I think is important, and I'm glad that I have access to this. I think this book is really good if you're looking for an introduction as to Greek poetry and you're not looking for epic Greek poems such as the Odyssey and the Iliad, and you're looking for something written by a female author and discussing bits of ancient Greek history that you don't know about. I recommend picking up this. Sure, some of these bits are some of these poems are just fragments of certain things because lots of Sappho's work wasn't actually preserved or saved. It's interesting comparing that contrast, and I think this translation is good. If you're looking for a different take on ancient Greece, definitely pick up Sappho. So the next book that I read in March was Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and this book was for A Rose by Any Other Name, which was to read a fantasy romance. Definitely achieved that. Daughter of the Moon Goddess was fantastic. I absolutely loved this book. If you aren't aware, in Chinese myth, and as well as lots of many East Asian myths, we have a myth retaining to the moon goddess. But this story focuses on the Chinese Mid-Autumn myth. It is a retelling of that myth, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. I've grown up in Asia. I've grown up listening to these sorts of stories relating to our holidays and the celebrations that we have. The Daughter of the Moon Goddess was absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed it. This book follows Xingying, Chang'e's Nuhaizi, so her daughter. Chang'e and Xingying have spent basically all of Xingying's life on the moon. Chang'e was pregnant with Xingying when she ascended to the moon, and in this story, the Celestial Empire, which is part of the gods and the godly pantheon of Chinese mythology, actually have made the moon Chang'e's prison. Originally, the Celestial Empire gave the elixir of immortality to Hoyin, who is Chang'e's husband. Chang'e took the elixir and she ascended to the moon with the baby, and they both became immortal. She drifted to the moon and took over the responsibilities of the moon because the Celestial Empire weren't actually happy. Hoyin, Chang'e's husband, was responsible for shooting 9 out of the 10 firebirds who were in the sky. Another part of Chinese mythology. He shot them all because these firebirds were basically causing havoc on the mortal plane, and he was rewarded with this elixir. So after years of Xingying living on the moon, she discovers that she actually has magic and she has the ability to use this magic, but her mum doesn't want her to use it. The main reason for that is that Chang'e doesn't want her daughter to be discovered by the Celestial Empire. One night, Xingying accesses her magic in a dream, and in the next few hours, the Celestial Empire come up to the moon looking for this disturbance. Xingying overhears what the Celestial Empress tells her mother, and Chang'e, after hearing what the Celestial Empress has in mind for her, decides that she needs to be sent away from the moon for her own safety. Xingying was originally going to be sent to the Southern Sea, but she doesn't make it and she ends up stranded in the Celestial Empire. The rest of this book follows Xingying's adventures in the Celestial Empire, working her way up to gain her mother's freedom. Along the way, we meet a few male love interests that Xingying has a connection to. The whole thing is Xingying's fighting for Chang'e's freedom. This book was so quick to read and really engaging. It's a fantasy romance book. It was adventurous and emotional. I cried a bit at the end. It's really fast paced, and I think if you're interested in sort of reading mythology that's outside of your known mythology, definitely pick this up. I highly recommend it. I gave it 4.5 stars, so there we go. The next book that I read in the month of March was The Thursday Murder Club. I swapped the book that I originally picked up for this card for this because I can do that with my cards. But the card that I selected for this book, is Ends in an Even Number. I looked on Goodreads, and because I listened to this on Audible, I looked and I found an edition that ended in an even number, so it fits for this prompt. This is a book that my mum actually recommended to me for my 12 books for 12 months. I enjoyed it. I gave this book 4 stars. The main characters in this book are all older, so they're all in a retirement village. They form this Thursday Murder Club where they come and they discuss unsolved cases. One day murder strikes in their retirement village and they decide to investigate the murder along with a very helpful cop who gives them more access to things than they probably should have. It was just a fun book. I think the mystery was really good. So obviously this is a crime/mystery book. It was adventurous and mysterious, and it was relatively fast paced. I listened to this on Audible at 2x speed and I really enjoyed it. I liked the voice acting. I think the voice actor who did the production on Audible was fantastic. And if you're looking for like a murder mystery with a different take on like your standard murder mystery, with like you have group dynamics as opposed to like a sole investigator, and you have multiple points of view, and I think it's just a fun way to read a murder mystery. I want to read the next one. Hopefully I can get that on Audible maybe later on this year, but we'll see. If you like crime novels, if you like mysteries, I think it's a good one. I think you'd enjoy it. Moving on, the next book that I read in March, this was actually for the Magical Readathon. The next book that I read was The Throne of Fire, and this book was for my Aurora Rang Through the Air, which is to read any book featuring a magical beast. As you can see, 2 snakes on the cover. This book is about the Egyptian gods. So yes, I have lots of Rick Riordan books on here. This book is the second book in the Crane Chronicles, which are up here. This book is about Egyptian mythology and the Egyptian pantheon, as well as the Egyptian ways of using magic. The whole series is sort of leading up to what's perceived to be the end of the world, Apophis, if you know ancient Egyptian mythology. While he doesn't have a main role in this book, you can definitely feel the dark undertones that are coming in, that are going to be in the last book of the series, which is really about how people fight to stop the end of the world. I just really enjoy this book. This was a really fast read for me. Rick Riordan's writing just really works for me. It's really fast paced. Again, this is magical realism with mythology, so it's set in the real world, but you obviously have you have a world above that as well. So this book has large sections that take place in the Egyptian underworld, I guess. There's sort of a fight between the different kinds of magicians. So Carter and Sadie, who are the 2 leads in this book, brother and sister, they actually follow the path of the gods, whereas most Egyptian magicians and their descendants have all sworn off using the gods and their powers because the gods cause too much trouble. Depends on who you talk to. I mean, the gods do cause a lot of trouble, but they're also like a massive help, especially in the story. It was absolutely fantastic. I think if you have the chance to listen to this on Audible, like on an audiobook, I think I would take it up, because this whole book is designed to be a voice recording, and I think this series would probably do really well audibly, as long as they're if there are 2 different voice actors, that would be absolutely fantastic. This book was really intriguing. I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars. This is a reread for me. I think it's really good. I think if you're interested in Egyptian mythology and you want to learn more, definitely check out the Crane Chronicles. They're absolutely fantastic. So there you go. The next book that I read, which is the second book I read for the Magical Readathon, is Tarka the Otter. Now, Tarka the Otter is the book I read for my classic card. So my classic card is to read a book classed as a classic. Pretty self-explanatory. I read this book because my character is a member of the Order of the Crescent. In my guild, every guild member actually has the ability to summon an animal familiar, and the prompt for the readathon for this month was to read a book. You had to have your animal in the title. I decided to go with Tarka the Otter. Apparently lots of people have chosen otters as their companions, which are great. My otter companion, I'm naming him Pip. Tarka the Otter is sort of similar to Watership Down, if you know Watership Down, but Tarka the Otter is actually a book that focuses on the life of an otter called Tarka. It's a children's book. It's quite light, adventurous. It's very slow paced, but I think it's actually designed to be read as each chapter is sort of its own individual story. So it's quite adventurous. You just hear about the animal behavior that goes on, the stuff otters are doing. I found it really fun because I studied animal behavior at university, and reading about this author's sort of observations on the otter and the otter's behavior is quite fun for me. It's nice reading stuff about animal behavior and reading why people why people think that otters do these sort of things. I'm interested in that sort of thing. I find it fun. Some people probably won't, but I read this really quickly. I gave this book 3.5 stars. Not a new favourite, but it was fun for what it was. It did get quite sad towards the end because I just think it was really interesting, and I think it was a nice take on a story about otters, and I didn't have to read a massive fantasy book. I think if you're looking for a sort of like children's story about otters and their life, and just about the life of an otter, I think you'd like this. The next book that I read was for the last card that I drew in my deck, which was read a book that ends in an odd number, and that's for Hook, Line and Sinker. This book came out in the beginning of the month. The book was really funny. It was quite light-hearted. It's a romance and a contemporary book as well. So this book is a friends to lovers story. Lots of the groundwork for this has been set up in It Happened One Summer. It follows a pair that we meet in It Happened One Summer. It follows Piper's sister Hannah and her relationship with the leading guy Fox. Fox and Hannah basically have been texting for a few months after the end of It Happened One Summer. The nice thing about this is in the prologue you actually see the text messages. I'm a massive fan of the friends to lovers trope. I like enemies to lovers, don't get me wrong, but I also really enjoy good friends to lovers. I actually quite like their relationship. So Fox sees himself as someone who's unworthy of love and unworthy to be in a relationship, and Hannah actually helping him begin his path to healing. Obviously therapy is recommended for self-healing because someone can't heal everything. Like you can't heal everyone's problems with like the wave of your finger, but it helps Fox to come to terms that he is worthy of being in a relationship, and it's not right that all these people have put these expectations on him because of his dad. I really liked this. I like their relationship. I think it's cute. I think one of the main issues that people have is that this isn't as smutty as Tessa Bailey's other books are. Like It Happened One Summer is definitely smuttier and the smut happens faster. This is much more slow burn. I like a good slow burn. I don't know the stats now, but I know some people just really didn't like this. But I really did. I gave this 5 stars. If you're looking for an adult romance and you want something with smut in it, definitely check out this series. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So there we go. These next few are books that I didn't draw cards for. The first book that I'm going to talk about is The Sea of Monsters. So this is the second book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. This book continues on with Percy's journey. This happens when he's 13. We meet a whole new set of characters. Grover, who is Percy's best friend, has gone missing and Percy wants to go find him, but there are issues at Camp Half-Blood and stuff needs to be resolved. This book is probably my favourite of the whole series. I absolutely love this book. I'm very fond of the ocean. I can't sing this book's praises enough. I absolutely love it. So there we go. I gave this 5 stars. No surprise. It's fast-paced, magical realism with mythology, and it's an adventure story. It's middle grade. It's fun. Now the next few books are all on my Kindle. So the next book that I read was Lord of the Fading Lands by C.L. Wilson. This came out in 2007. It's like fated mates sort of thing. It's a fated mates trope. It was a fantasy romance. It was relatively slow paced actually. This book is mostly spent on the relationship being built between the Lord of the Fading Lands, aka sort of like the king of the fairies, with this mortal girl. Not so sure she's mortal, but it's about their relationship and our main female lead sort of coming to terms with the fact that magic isn't all bad. Our main girl's name is Elisetta. Rain, who is the main male lead, gets a vision of sees her in a vision, is basically sort of like told to go to visit the city where she lives, and they meet and the souls call out to each other, you know, the fated mate stuff. It was fun. There is a bit of smut in the end, and I think if you like fantasy romance, if you like Sarah J Maas, I think you'll definitely like these books. So I'm going to continue the series. It's a 5-book series. But yeah, there we go. Moving on. Now, on to the last 2. As you all probably know, Bridgeton came out this past weekend, and I spent a good 8 hours just binging it. If you haven't seen it, you definitely need to check it out. This season follows one of my favourite books of the series, The Viscount Who Loved Me. It's so good. I really enjoy the adaptation that they did for the TV. It's not as raunchy as it is in the first season, but I actually like the direction that they went in the season. I'm probably gonna end up rewatching it probably next weekend, and I think the TV show was just fantastic. So because I was on a Bridgerton high on Saturday, I decided to read the next book in the Bridgerton series the next day because I didn't feel the need to reread The Viscount Who Loved Me. So I went and picked up An Offer from a Gentleman. This is Benedict's story. People find it a bit boring. I actually quite like it. I think it's just a fun one because in this book the concept of like love at first sight is played with, and there's a masquerade ball, so it's sort of like Cinderella but told in the Regency era. I really enjoyed this book because have a gap, like a time gap, which is obviously needed for the rest of the series because like you're setting up the books with Hyacinth, Gregory, Francesca and the lot of them, and if you kept going at the pace they were, like one every year without this time skip, it wouldn't work. So I think this plays really well. So the time skip in here is 3 years between the masquerade ball and before the two leads meet again. It's a Cinderella retelling. I enjoyed it. I gave this 4.5 stars, which has gone up half a star since the last time I read it. It's about opening society's eyes up to other people. So like some people call it dull, but I think it's a needed book, and I don't know, I just really enjoyed it and I think it's fun. Why wouldn't you read a fun Regency romance? So I finished this in like 4 hours, and then like an hour break later I picked up Romancing Mr Bridgeton. This is the 4th book, so this is Colin's book. Colin is my favourite Bridgerton brother. I really enjoyed him in the first book, although the first book definitely has issues. I really like Colin and who he is as a character from the first 3 books, and then you see his character development in this 4th book. I just really enjoy it. You have the discovery of Lady Whistledown, although the show does sort of tell you from the beginning, or like the end of the first season. The way that Lady Whistledown's identity is handled is very good in the TV series, knowing what I know about from the actual books. Romancing Mr Bridgerton is my favourite of the whole series. I really love Colin and I really enjoy the relationship. Romancing Mr Bridgerton is my favourite. You have Colin sort of grows as a character. He becomes much more three-dimensional in this book. So Colin is seen as like the happy-go-lucky person, like happy-go-lucky character throughout the rest of the books. He's sort of a troublemaker. You actually really build on him and his character in this book, and I absolutely love it. So that's the latest book that I've read. So that's it. Those are all the books that I read in March, which is quite a long list. I've had so much fun this month with the book choices. First off, I think I got very lucky with my drawer, but also the fact that I could just go out afterwards and choose whatever I wanted. I really appreciated, and it was me giving myself a birthday present basically. I hope you've had a great reading month too. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe if you want more bookish content. I hope you have a wonderful day or night depending on when you're watching this. Stay safe and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys!